Well, if you love learning new things, this is the right field for you. These are 10 things I have learned in my 8 years of doing product photography. First, like I said, you've got to love learning new things. The landscape of commercial photography is always changing. Trends are always fluctuating, and brands like to keep things fresh. They periodically like to try new things. So it does keep you on your toes, which is a fun field if you like to just try new things all the time and play with your photography and play with style and I don't know, like how you edit and how you shoot and how you style your lighting. Just all of that is really fun as long as you look at it that way. So you have to learn to love the fun of just trying new things all the time. Number 2, getting on the same page with your client is half the battle. Sometimes when a client is asking for a product shot like straight on, what they actually are asking for is a product shot like at a 45-degree angle. So especially if you're working remotely, you do need to communicate well with your client. That can mean visuals. Obviously in this work we do work with a lot of visuals, but just trying to like maybe showcase them some rough like unedited, like, do you want it shot like at this angle or this angle, like what are we going for here? Or if you've worked with the client before, you can go through previous work and be like, do we want it more like this one was done or like this one was done? Or if it's a new client and you don't have the time and luxury of shooting the product in hand a few different ways, then maybe going through stuff they see, other images online, and be like, this product was shot more straight on and this one, for example, was shot straight down. Or maybe using your own portfolio of work to showcase the different angles. That's just one scenario I'm speaking of, you know, the angle. There's a lot of other areas where miscommunication can happen. And so like we all think of things differently when we say the same thing. And it's hard to make sure we're all on the same page, because like if I say to think of a dog, you're going to probably think of a different breed of dog than the dog I'm thinking of. So it's just a part of the battle of what we do, is just making sure we actually understand each other, not just in saying the same things, but meaning the same thing. This is extremely detail-oriented work. As you get working through this, you will start to notice things more and more in post-production that you wish you would have taken note of in the shoot itself, so that you could have fixed it before you shot the photo. And that's just something you're gonna have to start, you know, based on what kind of stuff you shoot, you'll start learning the types of things you need to pay attention to in the shoot to save you from headaches later. So I'm just gonna share a few examples that I've seen, and like when I'm working with models, jewelry, tattoos, hair bands, things that can leave an indentation, watches. Like for example, if I were modeling something right now, we would have an issue because I have like a massive watch tan line, right? Just want to make sure that the client is aware of like this or that. Like when I see jewelry, like I see maybe a ring finger for like someone's married, right? I will run it by the client, be like, hey, this model, you know, has a wedding band. Is that a yay or nay on your, you know, image? Like what you're going for here, like who you're targeting. You know, there's just all those little things when it comes to working with a model. So that's just one side of it. Working with like clothing, there's a lot of hair and stuff like that to pay attention to, hair and wrinkles, loose threads, things like that. Working with product, like just, you know, on like a table setup, like tabletop type product photography. Hair as well, another one to look out for. Little like lint type stuff. There's just a lot of little fuzzies that can happen. So we do need to work with cloths, and it's also good to tether if you're working with small things like jewelry, because we're not going to see that in the camera. Unless we zoom into every little photo that we take and go around the entirety of the subject. And so if you tether, you can see very quickly a bigger picture of what's happening. You'll find a tiny little, you know, hair or lint or whatever on the product. You can adjust in real time. Other things are just like paying attention to props, sizing and textures of props, glasses, that's back to modeling again, or any glass stuff. So if you have like a laptop or tablet or phone, making sure those screens are clean, that the keyboard is clean, a lot of that stuff comes up. We don't really notice it because it's every day and we can look past that stuff. But whenever we see it in a photo, we do notice that kind of stuff. So I did kind of go on a bit of a tangent on some details there, but as you get to working with whatever your subject matter is, you'll start to see what commonly happens when you are editing your images, and you'll have to make your own mental checklist of things that you would like to potentially save yourself by getting it right in camera, like, when you shoot it, fixing those things beforehand. Moving on to number 4, the product is the subject, not the people. So when we're working with models, especially if you come from a portrait background or even just being a human, because we are attracted to faces, right? In product photography, they're not the subject. So we have to remember that. Let's say you have to choose, it's always the product that wins. The face is not the focus, right? We want to see the product. The face is secondary. And in fact, a lot of times in product photography, we try to hide people's faces in a way. It's not the main character. So that is a hard one to train our brains for, but do remember that the product is the hero here. I mentioned focus stacking really quickly. I do have a video on this, on a quick tutorial on how I do it. There's so many ways to go about it, so feel free to learn different ways and figure out which way works for you, but focus stacking is an essential skill, and at one point or another you will probably have to figure this out, especially if you're working with product a lot, if it's the majority of what you plan on doing. So some shots just simply require this. Take some time to search and learn and practice how to do it if you do need to do it. Number 6, it's not about you. Now this one is important and really hard to learn. Because when we create, we tend to associate what we create as like part of our identity. So you will have to learn to separate yourself from your work. At the end of the day, this is business. Your client is critiquing an image based on KPIs. They're not giving feedback on whether or not it's a good image. They're giving feedback on whether or not it will get them to their end goal. So that's a really hard one to learn. But you do have to remember, sometimes I'm working with, companies, and there's so many eyes on the image, and each one of them is giving their niche take on if this, their take on the image. So there's the founder or whatever who's this is their baby. They want to make sure that the image is representative of their love for their business, right? Then you have the social media people who are well, this one's not representative of what's trending right now, or this one's not going to work well for this format. They're just really making sure it works for whatever their needs are. You have the website people who are looking at it saying this image doesn't give us enough room on the left or right, or it's too whatever, we can't use it as this, where we want to use it. Or you have the people who are just studying it to see if it's going to turn over, click-through rate and all of that. So there's just so many people that might have their take on your image, and then you have the person who's your handhold person, your handler, who's this turned out to be a no, from our marketing or from our whatever, and so we're going to have to go in a different direction. Let's try this. And so you can't take that personally, because they're not looking at it saying, oh, this is a good image or a bad image. They're looking at it saying, this doesn't meet our needs. A lot of times they might give you feedback that you will just cry inside, and you have to realize at the end of the day, it's not about you. It's not about your work as a whole. It's about, does this meet their needs? Number 7 is to get comfortable with natural, flash, and constant lighting, all kinds of lighting. I have found myself in many situations where I don't have a say in the type of lighting that we use. I go on set, they want us to do this thing at this place, and it's just the way it is. Or we're working with a videographer, and so they don't have time to book us separately because of everything involved, the models and the location and the production team and everything. They only have this, we've got a tandem shoot, the both of you. That's actually quite common. You're stuck making sure that you work well within the boundaries that are set. With that being said, though, don't be afraid to let them know, hey, if this is really important to you, this end result here, this is how I want to shoot that. And they might be able to carve and work together. Might be able to work together to make it happen. Just make sure you're comfortable with all kinds of lighting in case you're put into a situation where you don't really have a choice. Number 8 is very important. It's personal photo projects. So I love what I do. However, I want to continue loving what I do. And eventually, and too quickly, shooting and playing with your camera and taking photos is only for work. And that is when you can get a little lost. And so I make sure that I try to do something for myself at least once a month. Each year I will come up with some kind of a challenge for myself, and more often than not it becomes a self-portrait challenge, just because I really have fun with that. Tell myself, I commit to myself saying once a month I will do this type of shoot for me, and I like to share it as a way to like kind of follow up on that commitment, a bit of accountability. It's important though to just kind of make sure you block out time for you to enjoy your craft for you, like so you are your own client every once in a while. It's very important. I can't stress how important that is, because it's way too easy to get lost, I think, and kind of get swallowed up in the chaos of client work, which we love and we're happy for, we're grateful for. It's what we are striving to do, right? Be busy with client work, and but also you want to make sure you are creating for you. So, because you do love this, you need to remember that. Number 9 is to educate your clients about your service and expectations. Deliverable, reshoot, edit, graphic design, prop and backdrop, inventory and budgets, etc. There's a lot to go through here. I'm not going to go into all the details of this because a lot of this is very personable. Like this is, you're going to have to decide where you stand on all these things. And unfortunately, it's something you'll have to learn by doing, to be like, well, I don't actually want to do a lot of graphic design in my work, or I do want to do a lot of graphic design, and that will dictate the expectations you set for your clients and how you price things. Editing, how you edit, how much editing, how long it takes. You'll have to just learn by doing to figure out where you stand on these things. And then once you figure that out, make sure you document that for yourself and put that into writing or into communications, whatever it is that however you communicate with your clients, to make sure that they and you are on the same page on where you stand on stuff. Which brings me into 10, which is boundary. A lot of that kind of segues into this, and they could be considered the same point, but I do want to emphasize that boundaries are very, very important, and they are another thing that you'll have to learn by doing to find out where you're comfortable. Then make sure that is just well known for yourself and for others. And if you don't set the boundary, then the boundary will be set for you. Well, I hope that this helped you or at least gave you some insight into, running a product photography business. I'll see you in the next video.